Earned the right? That was similar to what Tom had said too. And what if she doesn't want to? Lucy asked anxiously. Well, it's her choice. I'm certain her driver would not force himself on her. I'm just saying if she is going to pick someone, then it can as well be the person she picked the first time, Lucas said reasonably. What if? Lucy, let's stop playing around now. I know you well enough to know you wouldn't call me to ask about a colleague's friend that means nothing to you. You called because this is bothering you, and it's only bothering you this much because you're probably attracted to him. Am I wrong? Lucas asked. I'm not attracted to him. You can't convince me otherwise. I've been with you all our lives, so I know you better than anyone else. And honestly, I'm glad that there is someone you feel this way about even. I don't feel any way about him, Lucy cut in. Even though I'm sure you're going to stubbornly hold on to your decision of not getting involved with any guy, Lucas continued as though she hadn't interrupted him. Tell me something, why can't you just let yourself have a little fun? He asked in a concerned tone. Lucy sighed in resignation. There was no point arguing with him or trying to convince him otherwise. Lucas was very stubborn, and once he believed something, he held on to it like a dog to a bone. He likes someone else. He told you that, didn't he? Yes. Is he dating this person? Have you met her? Lucas asked thoughtfully. Not yet. Do you know if he has made his feelings known to her? He asked again. No, he hasn't, Lucy said, wondering why Lucas was asking so many questions. Does it bother you that he likes someone else? Lucas asked thoughtfully. Of course not. He even asked me to help him get the lady. I'm not interested in him, honest to God. He asked her to help him get the lady, and then he was also asking her to have an affair with him? Something didn't add up about the story. He had a feeling that the person the guy liked was Lucy and not any other lady. It was probably best he keeps the knowledge to himself, since he knew Lucy well enough to know that the moment she suspects the guy likes her, she would run in the opposite direction. You told him you're not interested in guys? Lucas asked thoughtfully. Of course I did. I don't want him getting wrong ideas. And he offered to be your first lover, am I right? Lucas asked, making Lucy cringe in embarrassment. There used to be a time when she and Lucas talked about everything possible. He had even confided in her the first time he had sex with Rachel while they were in high school. Now she felt awkward talking to him about this. Yes. Can you stop asking me so many awkward questions and just tell me what you think I should do? Lucy asked impatiently. From everything she had said, Lucas had gotten all the information he needed to confirm his suspicions. It was probably fate that had brought her and this guy together, and he was in love with Lucy. But because she didn't want a relationship, he had offered to be her lover while also making her let down her guard by leading her to believe that he was interested in someone else. He liked the guy already. I know this is likely going to be a bad idea, but I'm going to give it anyway. Since you're not looking for a serious relationship, but you obviously want a lover, wouldn't it be better to get involved with someone you know and are attracted to? Someone who isn't interested in your heart but just your body? Lucas asked, even though he doubted the man Lucy was talking about wanted only her body. Lucy pursed her lips as she gave it a thought, maybe. Good. So you should probably stop thinking about it too much and tell your colleague's friend to give it a try, he added jocularly. Why do I feel like you're saying this only because you want me to get involved with someone at all cost? Lucy asked suspiciously. I'm saying this only because I love you, and I want you to be happy. Besides, I will feel better knowing you have someone out there who is looking out for you. So think about it, please. All right. I will think about it. You can't tell either Mom or Dad about this, Lucy warned. You know I won't. Your secret is safe with me, Lucas promised. You can't tell Rachel either, Lucy added, making Lucas pause. I know you still don't like her much, but can you please try harder? Lucas asked in a low tone so that Rachel wouldn't know they were talking about her. I don't have to like her. You are the one who is in a relationship with her, not me, Lucy pointed out. We are one, remember? You are my twin sister and I really want you both to get along, Lucas pleaded. You should have thought of that before getting involved with her after she tried to cause confusion between us, Lucy said grudgingly. She was only a teenager then. She has changed a lot since high school, I promise. I'm not promising anything, but I will try, Lucy said with a yawn. That reminds me, Rachel and I have picked a date for our wedding, Lucas announced. Oh. Already? Lucy asked in surprise. She had thought they were probably just going to remain engaged for some time while living together. Yes. We will be getting married in a month. And I'm hoping you won't come alone, Lucas said, making Lucy roll her eyes. Since when did you start sounding like Mom? Lucy asked dryly, making Lucas chuckle. So what is his name? Lucas asked curiously. Lucy feigned a yawn. I need to sleep now, and I'm sure you have to return to your darling fiancé. Good night. I love you, Lucy said and hung up without waiting for Lucas to respond. What had she been expecting? She should have known Lucas would say this. Both her mother and Sonia, and maybe her father too, would also have said the same thing, because they all wanted her to get involved with a man. She sighed as she lay down on her bed and shut her eyes as though shutting out all the thoughts in her head. She would just think about it tomorrow, even though she wasn't looking forward to facing Tom. Good morning, Miss Perry. Did you have a good night's rest? Tom greeted politely when Lucy joined him by the car the following morning. She wasn't wearing her glasses as instructed and her long black hair fell around her shoulders in cascades. She was dressed in a peach-colored suit, with white camisole inside, and a white handbag on her right wrist to match the white stiletto heels on her feet. Lucy blinked at him for a moment as if she wasn't sure he was talking to her. Had last night been a dream? Or perhaps he had been on hard drugs? Lucy wondered as she stared at him. Taking a closer look at him, she noticed the amusement in his eyes. It definitely wasn't a dream. He was trying to mess with her mind. Now that she was certain it was her he was speaking to, she tried to wear a straight face. Good morning. I slept well. Thank you, Lucy said curtly, without bothering to inquire about his night. After the attitude he had put up the previous evening, she wasn't sure she could trust him to answer her questions without a hint of sexual undertones in his words. He seemed like an entirely different person to her now. Once Lucy woke up that morning, she had made up her mind to hold off Tom's advances for as long as she could. That would give her ample time to help him get his mystery lady. That way he wouldn't want to have sex with her and risk jeopardizing his relationship. If possible, she was going to find the woman he liked and even become close friends with her. That way he wouldn't risk coming too close to her. Lucy got into the back seat of the car this time, as though trying to remind Tom that she was his boss and expected him to treat her as such. Tom got the message loud and clear. He was beginning to enjoy the chase. Maybe this was why it was said that men loved to chase women who were difficult to get. Her attitude was only going to make the victory sweeter when eventually she succumbs to his temptation. Tom had a smirk on his face, but said nothing as he turned on the car's ignition and drove off. Tom kept stealing glances at her through the rearview mirror until she met his gaze once. Are you nervous? Tom asked, making her raise a brow. Am I supposed to be? One edge of Tom's lips curved in a smile when he noted that she had regained control of her emotions. He liked that, and it made him want to ruffle her feathers. I don't know. I overheard Mr. Harry say something about the CEO coming to work today. He said, making Lucy's heart skip a beat as she sat up involuntarily. The CEO? She asked nervously, and Tom gave her a nod. Why didn't you mention it yesterday? I thought you were aware. I only just realized that you had no idea, sorry. It's fine, Lucy said thoughtfully. Perhaps she could ask Sonia to find out what she could about her boss from his brother? And also get a picture if possible? She deserved to know the face of the freak she was working for. Speaking of Sonia, Lucy realized that she was yet to hear from Sonia since she said she was on her way to visit Brian, so she immediately unlocked her phone to dial Sonia's line, but smiled when Sonia's call came in at that same moment. Were you spying on me? Or do you read minds now? I was just about to dial your line, Lucy said, making Sonia smile. That's why I'm your soulmate, baby. Good morning, Sonia said with a yawn as she walked out of the house dressed in a red bikini and carrying one of Brian's towels. She had woken up earlier than Brian, thanks to her poor sleeping habit which seemed to be her curse as a writer. You're still in bed? Lucy asked curiously, wondering why she called if she was still sleepy. L1T Lagoon witnessed the first publication of this chapter on N0 Velby 1N. No. I'm up and on my way to the swimming pool. I'm sorry, I couldn't call to let you know about my trip. I arrived safely and then we went out and returned really late and wasted. Lucy pursed her lips. Wasted? I suppose things are going well between you two? Lucy asked dryly. Well, you could say so. Don't worry about me, I'm just going to seduce him while trying to get inspiration for the story I'm working on at the moment. The plan is simple though, it's either he gives me his heart or he gives me a baby, Sonia said with a mischievous smile. While at the club with him the previous evening she had made up her mind on this. Her ability to change her mind on what she wanted at every minute was one of her biggest flaws. Lucy's brows creased in worry. Are you sure that is what you want? You shouldn't do something you might end up wishing you didn't do, Lucy said in a concerned tone like the good girl she was. Hearing the concern in her tone, Tom glanced at her through the rearview mirror as he tried to guess who she was speaking with. Her brother? Or her best friend? Don't worry about me. I'm a big girl and you know it. So what about you? How is your driver? Sonia asked, making Lucy's eyes flicker to the rearview mirror where she met Tom's eyes. She quickly looked away. I'm in the car. On my way to work, Lucy said, hoping Sonia would get the message. Oh. Okay then. I was going to ask, could you help me find out what you can about my boss? Lucy asked, not noticing the curious expression that appeared on Tom's face when he heard her. His ears had pricked at her words. Oh. So now you want me to be a loudmouth and tell Brian about you working for his brother, right? Sonia asked dryly, reminding her that just the previous day she had asked her not to say a word to Brian about her. I'm not asking you to tell him I work for his brother. Just extract information from him. It would be better if you can get me pictures too, Lucy suggested as Tom drove into the parking lot of the company. Whose brother? Who was she talking about? Tom mused as he listened in on her conversation. Whose brother? Him? Who was she talking to? And who were they talking about? Tom mused as he listened in on her conversation. Sonia paused, her lips thoughtfully. Well, I will see what I can do for you. Call me when you're alone and can talk about your super hot driver, Sonia said before they both hung up. Who were you talking to? You know someone who knows the boss? Tom asked as he parked the car. He didn't bother to hide the fact that he had eavesdropped on her conversation. Of course, he had heard her. If she didn't want him to hear her conversation, she wouldn't have made the call in his presence. He wasn't sitting on top of his ears, and he definitely hadn't left his ears at home. She had made the call in front of him, so it was only fair that she satisfy his curiosity. L1T Lagoon witnessed the first publication of this chapter on N0 Velby 1N. Lucy met his gaze in the rearview mirror, and she looked at him as if she was contemplating whether or not to share such a classified information with him. At least this was a normal conversation between friends when compared to what he had done the previous evening. She was going to keep treating him as a friend regardless of what he says or does. That way he would get used to being a friend and stick to the friend zone, Lucy reasoned. After a moment's hesitation, she finally said, You can keep a secret, right? You can't tell anyone else about this. Can I trust you? I'm sure you know you can, Tom said, and Lucy leaned a bit forward in her seat as if she was scared someone else might hear what she wanted to say. "Remember my best friend, Sonia? She is engaged to Brian Hank, the CEO's younger brother," Lucy said in a whisper, making the hair on Tom's neck stand on end. Maybe if she looked close enough, she would notice the goosebumps that had appeared on his exposed arm at her words. What the heck? How had this happened? Of all the ladies in the world, his younger brother was engaged to Lucy's best friend? Did Brian possibly know Lucy? There was no way this was a coincidence like the rest coincidences, since he hadn't planned for this to happen. He would have been busted even before he started? Tom reasoned in his head, as he tried to maintain a neutral expression. Luckily, the surprise on his face was real, even though it was for a different reason from what Lucy was thinking. "You're surprised, right?" Lucy asked with a small smile. "Wow. I'm very surprised. It's a very small world, isn't it?" Lucy decided to leave out the part that it was a fake engagement, and nodded her head. "Yes, it is. So maybe she can help me to get his pictures. I think I will feel more at ease when I know what he looks like, and maybe find out a thing or two about his personality," Lucy said as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "Yeah. I understand. Good luck with that. I hope you show me his picture when you finally get it," Tom said with a polite smile as she opened the car door, getting set to get down. "Maybe if you're nice I will show you. Remember, you can't tell anyone else about this. The last thing I want is for everyone in the company to find out about this. They would assume I got promoted because my best friend got engaged to the CEO's brother, and I don't want that," Lucy said with a frown, and Tom nodded in understanding. "You don't have to worry, my lips are sealed," Tom promised and used his fingers to make a zipping gesture on his lips. She gave him a nod as she got out of the car. "See you at lunchtime," he called out to her as she walked away, reminding her that she had asked him to have lunch with her the previous day. Lucy regretted doing that now, as she walked towards the building. She had made an impulsive decision the previous day, and now she couldn't back out of it. Although she intended to keep being nice to him, she wasn't sure she would be very comfortable with him in a closed space after all he had said. That he had acted properly during the drive to the office wasn't a guarantee that he would act properly during lunchtime. It had taken all the courage stored up in her reservoir to face Tom that morning. She didn't think she had any courage left to face her boss and then to face Tom too. Her lips curved in a smile when an idea suddenly occurred to her. Perhaps she could cancel lunch with Tom by telling him that the CEO said he doesn't want her having lunch with anyone around his office premises. She was certain the CEO was going to be a wet blanket after all. She would wait for Tom to bring her food as usual, and then she would tell him that he couldn't eat with her in her office. That should work, Lucy thought happily. Proud of herself for coming up with such a brilliant idea, she hummed a happy tune as she got into the elevator. Once she disappeared from his sight, Tom dialed Brian's line. He listened to it ring for a while before it disconnected. He dialed Brian's number again, and the same thing happened. He kept dialing Brian's line as he waited for him to take his call. Why was Brian not taking his call? Tom wondered anxiously as he dialed Mia's line. "Good morning, Mr. Hank," Mia greeted politely. "Is there a reason my brother isn't taking his call?" Tom asked, ignoring her greeting. Mia would have been offended, but she could hear the worry in his voice, so she answered, "He is with his fiancée, so maybe he is busy?" She asked, guessing that Brian had not told his family that it was a fake engagement. "His fiancée? She is with him?" Tom asked at the verge of panic. "Yes. She arrived yesterday," Mia explained, making Tom panic even more. What if he was unable to reach Brian before his fiancée talked to him? How could Sonia have been on the phone a while ago, yet Brian wasn't close to his phone? He wondered irritably. "Thank you. Please, if you're able to reach him, do let him know I need to speak with him as soon as possible," Tom said before hanging up. He got out of the car and headed for his private elevator. He was just going to spend his time working on his disguise while waiting for Brian to give him a call. Brian woke up the next morning with one hell of a headache, and he knew he was paying the price for drinking too much the previous evening. He sat up when he remembered why he had consumed so much alcohol. It was that green-eyed witch, he thought as he raised both hands to his head that was aching so badly as though it was going to fall off if he hung it at the wrong angle. He glanced to his side, expecting to see her lying on the bed next to him, but she wasn't there. Where could she have gone to? Had she left again, like she had done the last time? He wondered as he managed to get out of the bed. He walked into the living room, but there was no trace of her there. He checked the other 2 spare bedrooms, but still did not see her. He had a worried frown on his face now as he returned to his bedroom. He decided to take pain medication for his head before going to search for her. Perhaps she had passed out somewhere. The last thing he wanted was for his fake fiancée to be found lying dead in his house. After taking the pain medication, he wore a robe over the boxer shorts and yellow t-shirt which he was still wearing. He had no idea how his trousers had come off, but he was glad he hadn't woken up naked. The last thing he wanted was for the green-eyed witch to tell him that they had sex and she was pregnant with his child. He heard the patio door open as he stepped out of the bedroom into the living room, and the green-eyed witch catwalked into the living room dressed in a wet red-colored bikini that clung to her body like a second skin, and a towel wrapped around her waist. Her long blonde hair was dripping wet, and she had a smile on her face as she looked at him. "Good morning, darling," she greeted with a cheerful smile as she walked up to him and kissed him on the lips before walking towards the bedroom. Brian didn't know what to say to her, so he just followed her and watched as she let the towel fall on the floor before stepping into the walk-in bathroom with glass doors. A part of him was relieved that she hadn't left while he was sleeping as she had done the last time. Another part of him was worried, as he tried to figure out how long she intended to carry on with this madness. "Darling, please, do you mind getting my stuff from the car?" she asked from the bathroom as she turned on the shower. Without saying a word, Brian picked up his phone and the car keys and walked out of the bedroom. Once he was inside the elevator, he scrolled through his phone to check the calls he had missed before dialing Matt's line, since he had missed Matt's call twice the previous evening, and once that morning. "Hey. Where have you been?" Matt asked in a concerned tone. "Passed out on my bed, thanks to the green-eyed witch," Brian said, and Matt chuckled. "Green-eyed witch? Should I assume you are referring to your beautiful fiancée?" "Don't tell me you passed out after too many rounds of banging her," Matt asked in a teasing tone. "I would rather cut off my dick than fuck that witch." "I'd love to watch you eat your words," Matt said with a chuckle. "Not going to happen, trust me." "So when are you coming over?" Brian asked impatiently as he put on his Crocs slippers and left the house, headed for the parking lot. "Coming over?" Matt repeated the question. "Yeah? You promised to help me get rid of her, didn't you? If I remember correctly, you're not very busy at the moment, so come over so you can meet her." "I don't know how long she plans to be here, but I don't want to be alone with her," Brian pleaded. "Are you sure about that?" Matt asked thoughtfully. "Trust me when I say I want nothing more than to put an end to this relationship and get her as far away from me as possible. So please leave whatever you are doing and come save a brother." "Take this as a save my soul call," Brian pleaded as he automatically unlocked the car and raised Sonia's luggage out of the trunk. "If you insist. I'll be there before sunset," Matt promised before hanging up. Brian decided to stay back and give Tom a call before returning inside. He had failed to check in on Tom to find out if he had accomplished his assignment the previous day. And he was yet to give him his assignment for the new day, Brian thought as he sat down at the edge of the open car trunk before dialing Tom's line. The inaugural upload of this chapter took place via N0V3L.BJN. Great that you finally decided to give me a call. I was just about to send out a search party for you, Tom muttered irritably once he received the call. You seem to be in a foul mood, did something happen? Brian asked curiously since Tom was hardly the sort to lose his temper. Tom took in a deep breath to calm himself. You're not going to believe this. Even I find it difficult to believe, but it's true. Your fiancé just happens to be my girl's best friend, Tom said, sounding very anxious. What? You've got to be kidding me. Brian muttered in disbelief. How was that possible? It didn't even make sense. I wish I was. You know what this means, right? You have to get rid of my pictures or anything you have of me that could expose my identity, Tom said urgently. Hold on a minute, how is this possible? It doesn't even make any sense. Of all the girls in the world, that. Brian took in a deep breath to calm himself so as not to give himself away. You mean Sonia is your girl's best friend? Yeah. I'm just as surprised as you are, Tom said with a sigh. I hope you haven't told her anything about me yet? Tom asked hopefully. No, I haven't. But how did you find out? Brian asked curiously. I overheard them both talking over the phone, and Lucy asked her to find out what she could from you, Tom explained. Brian's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he recalled snippets of Sonia's conversation with Lucy that first day he had met her. Sonia had mentioned the name, Tom. And he grinned when he remembered that she had said something about a neighbor with benefits, and he also remembered hearing her ask her friend to have sex with the handyman. So that handyman he had been feeling sorry for was his own brother? What a lovely twist. Small world, isn't it? Don't worry, I will do my best to keep your identity from her, Brian promised. So I suppose you know Lucy? Tom asked, making Brian raise a brow. I'm hearing the name for the first time today, Brian said without thinking. How come you don't know the name of your fiancé's best friend? I found out about Sonia the first night I spoke to Lucy. What do you spend time talking about if you don't even know the people who are close to her? Tom asked with disapproval, and Brian realized his error. Being the smart actor he was, he quickly came up with an answer. Maybe I spend my time doing other fun things, rather than talking, and that's why we are engaged now, Brian said jocularly, making Tom chuckle. He knew he was going to have to tell Tom the truth about his false engagement to Sonia soon, else Sonia's bestie was going to beat him to it, and then Tom would likely get mad. But he couldn't tell Tom about it at the moment. The timing was wrong, and he needed to get back to Sonia with her luggage so she could find something to change into. Well, just make sure you get to know her unless, of course, you'd like to get divorced as other celebrities do, Tom said, and he added, also, I'll like you to find out more about Lucy from her if you don't mind. I will see what I can do. What about Lucy? How did it go with the assignment yesterday? Brian asked, and listened attentively as Tom told him all that happened the previous day, only leaving out their discussion in her apartment since he hadn't told her about their night together. He could only hope that she hadn't told Sonia about it, which he highly doubted. He prayed that Sonia wouldn't mention anything regarding that to Brian. Brilliant. So I suppose you're going to be dressing up today as the boss? Brian asked thoughtfully. That was what I was doing before you called, Tom said, looking at his reflection in the mirror. He had attached the fake beards and mustache already, and the wig was also positioned on his head. Good. Your assignment today. Have someone else deliver her lunch. Don't show up for it. If she calls, don't respond either. Make sure whoever delivers her lunch tells her you are having lunch with someone else. Tom smiled, knowing that was the one step forward and two steps backward strategy which Lucy had talked about. I will do just that, he said with a nod. He had been trying to figure out the best way to apply her lesson, but now that Brian had given him the idea, it was simple. As soon as Brian was done returning all his missed phone calls, he picked up Sonia's luggage and returned to the house. Once he walked through the door, he was welcomed by the aroma of scrambled eggs with bacon and an underlying aroma of coffee. The aroma was so pleasant and homely that it made him nostalgic. He left the luggage by the living room and followed the aroma to the kitchen. He stopped by the doorway when he saw Sonia dressed in one of his t-shirts. She had her back to the door as she prepared breakfast, while she rapped alongside Cardi B's song which was playing from her phone. He couldn't tell what she was wearing underneath the t-shirt, but her legs were endlessly long, smooth, and very attractive. His eyes lingered on her legs for a moment before he slowly lifted his gaze. Because she had her back to him, his eyes fell on her long curly hair which was resting on her back. He could tell she had used his hairdryer since her hair, which had been wet earlier, was dry now. As if he was being controlled by a remote, his eyes returned to her legs, and he imagined running his hands over it to see if they would feel as smooth as they looked. He looked up when he heard her clear her throat, and realized much to his embarrassment that she had turned around while he was staring at her legs and he hadn't even noticed. Sonia's eyes gleamed with amusement as he met her gaze. "I take it you are a leg man?" Brian wore an aloof expression on his face. "Your luggage is in the living room," he said in an indifferent tone. He had no intention of letting her believe he was sexually attracted to her. He wasn't. It had just been a while since he last had a woman with him, and he was certain he wouldn't give her legs a second glance once he satisfied himself. So he wanted to pretend like she hadn't just caught him checking her out. "Cool. For a moment there, I thought you got into your car and ran away," Sonia said in an easy voice. "I can't say the thought didn't exactly cross my mind. But I couldn't just run away dressed like this. Won't be good for my reputation," Brian responded, flashing her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sonia threw back her head and laughed gaily, making him think that she seemed to laugh a lot. He made a mental note to search Google for mental disorders that made people laugh a lot. That could be a lead. Maybe she was a psychopath like Joker. "You see that? That right there is the reason I'm so drawn to you. You are so hilariously funny, my love," Sonia said before returning her attention to what she was doing. Brian had a smirk on his face as he walked over to the coffee maker and poured himself a cup of coffee. She was drawn to him because he was funny, huh? He couldn't wait to see what she would think about Matt. The guy was the real comedian and charmer between them. Brian sat on one of the seats in the kitchen and sipped his coffee very slowly as he watched her move around his kitchen as if she owned the place. Seeing how she ignored his presence, he assumed she probably thought he had left, but she proved him wrong when she turned to look at him. "I suppose your cook and cleaners will be resuming today, right?" she asked curiously. "Why? Don't tell me you are already tired of strutting around my home like you own the place?" Brian drawled as he nursed the cup of coffee on his hands. "Trust me, I'm not. At least, not yet. I will be using one of your spare rooms as my workroom for the duration of my stay here. So I just need to know which of the bedrooms is available," Sonia said, looking at him expectantly. "You can have the room at the end of the hall. How long do you intend to stay for?" He asked the question that had been on his mind since he saw her luggage. Although he didn't like her very much, it felt good to have someone with him in the house that he could talk to. "I don't know yet. I guess we will both have to wait and see," she said with a sweet smile, and Brian nodded. "That best friend you talked about yesterday, what is her name?" Brian asked, trying to subtly extract information from her. "Lucy? Why do you ask?" Sonia asked curiously. Perhaps his brother had found out about his employee being besties with his future sister-in-law? She wouldn't put it past these wealthy people to dig around other people's lives. "Nothing really serious. I'm just wondering if she is anything like you. I wonder how she puts up with a person like you," Brian said, making Sonia giggle. "Lucy is completely different from me, don't worry. She is the sane and sweet one between us. Maybe that is why we are best of friends," Sonia said with a wide smile as she thought of Lucy. Thank goodness. He couldn't imagine his cool brother having to be in a relationship with someone as crazy as Sonia. Tom would never survive it, that's good. "I hope I get to meet her someday," Brian said, making Sonia narrow her eyes suspiciously. "Why? Are you really asking me that? Isn't she the best friend of the love of my life? What sort of a fiancé would I be if I don't meet someone who is that important to you?" Brian asked, making Sonia giggle. Love of your life. 1 minute you are talking to me like I'm a nutcase, and the next minute you're calling me the love of your life. You need to stick to a script, darling, Sonia said with an amused smile. Brian dropped his cup on the counter closest to him, and took a few steps in her direction, covering the space between them as he stopped in front of her. He said nothing as he looked down at her and into her mischievous green eyes. I told you I was going to be the doting fiancé, didn't I? Being the doting fiancé doesn't mean I no longer think you are a nutcase. He whispered to her as he reached out a hand and tucked her hair behind her ear, without taking his eyes away from hers. Sonia held his gaze, but said nothing as she waited to see what he was going to do next. Brian leaned forward and brought his face closer to hers, making her blink involuntarily. She swallowed when he brushed his soft lips on hers, making her heart flutter. By the way, my best friend is coming over today. I want him to meet you, Brian whispered over her lips before taking a step back. What was he up to? She wondered as her eyes narrowed into slits. Matt? I see you know him already, Brian said in an impressed tone. Just how much research had she done for her to know the names of almost everyone associated with him? Brian mused. Even your devoted fans know him. How can you expect your fiancé not to know him? Sonia asked, making a clucking sound with her tongue as she turned away from him to serve the breakfast into a dish. Brian raised a brow when she sat down to eat, and he realized she had served everything for herself and had left nothing for him. He opened his mouth to say something about it, but snapped it shut as his ego wouldn't let him admit that he wanted a taste of the food. Sonia ate in silence for a while, expecting him to at least say something or ask if she wasn't going to offer him breakfast. When he didn't, she raised her head to look at him and met his glaring eyes. If eyes could kill, she was sure she would be lying lifeless on the floor by now, Sonia thought in amusement. She flashed him a smile when she remembered Lucy's request. Perhaps she could stylishly ask him about his siblings and find out the little she could about his brother. By the way, you have 2 siblings, right? She asked, making Brian snort. Did she really think she had any right to ask him questions right now after choosing to starve him in his own house? Brian thought in disbelief, and without responding to her question he stood up and walked over to the sink where he emptied the rest of his coffee and rinsed the cup before walking out of the kitchen. N0 Vel B J N was the platform where this chapter was initially revealed on N0V3L.B1N. He decided to just use the time to go around his house and see if he had any picture of Tom around somewhere. He picked up Sonia's luggage from the spot he had left it earlier and carried it to the bedroom at the end of the hall. He had no intention of sharing his closet with her.